It's time for the Wrestlecast on the Sportscast Media Network. Join us now for a discussion on wrestling at the high school and college levels. Here's Gage Gill, Shane Barron, and Danny Davis.
Welcome to the Wrestlecast. I'm your host, Danny Davis. I'm joined with Shane Barron and Gage Gill today. And I was just thinking throughout the week that we're at our third show right now. And on our first show, we kind of went over, who these guys are and their credentials. And I just thought now, if anyone is joining us on the third show, that they might need a recap of who you guys are. So, Gage, I'll start with you. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I've had some people approach me saying, hey, I've listened to an episode. I keep telling them, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Having me as a part of this, but glad to be a part of it. This is how I fit into wrestling. I've thought about this question over the week. I'm a lover of competition and improvement, and I think that's why I've probably been a teacher and coach and now a principal this year, just to see the improvement, and that's kind of what wrestling's all about. But I'm the principal at Winfield Mount Union right now. I've taught for 10 years, being a PE teacher, social studies, a little bit of everything. Coached, head track coach for 8 years, cross country, junior high basketball, a little bit of everything. So back in the area and now wrestling enthusiast.
All right, Shane?
Well, Danny, when you approached me for doing this podcast, I was kind of scared for my own sake on whether I knew enough about wrestling or anything like that. But I think what we're all trying to accomplish here is we all appreciate wrestling, and I appreciate the commitment that these athletes have. And I'm a teacher by trade, but I've been an internet rat here for the last couple of weeks trying to get to know all these names and faces, and it's an overwhelming task. But so far, I've had a blast, and I've always wanted to add podcaster to my resume. So thanks to you, it's already been done.
Well, and thank you guys. I hadn't planned on this. We throughout the week we talk about what's going to go on in the program, and just for anybody who's kind of curious what goes on behind the scenes, we usually talk and throughout the week of what we're going to put on the program, and then come Sunday, which is when we record it, Sunday afternoon, we usually kind of shape it up at the last minute, make some changes and stuff. I didn't have this in the plans until earlier this week, and I thought, man, I got to get these guys a Christmas gift. And so I got you guys both something.
Oh, man.
And I thought, well, I hope these gifts make you guys as happy as you've made me. So I'm going to give Shane his first.
This is live on air.
This is live on air.
Oh, wow.
An instant audience and there's 4 buttons on the left-hand side. It says applause, crickets, rim shot, and boo. Well, we can eliminate 3 of those, I think.
It just went off. I got one for Gage. It's going to coincide with what you got, Shane.
So we got a dad joke button. For those that don't know, my wife is extremely pregnant. She's
extremely
going to give birth to our son at any time. So, this will be good for me to have. I might just keep this on my desk and just throw them around from time to time.
Well, why don't you play one right now? He's got his audience right here.
Let's see what we got.
Welcome to the Plastic Surgery Addicts Group. I see a lot of new faces here today.
There we go.
I like it.
Isn't it great? Right.
We have our own sound effects now.
We do. Yeah, we do.
Well, Danny, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take this to school tomorrow because if you're a middle school teacher, you do anything to get their attention. So I throw a lot of lame jokes around, hoping to get anything. So,
well, you might want to get you a dad joke button.
I'm going to borrow it from Gage after he's done.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, it's been a busy week, and Shane, you had talked about, or Gage, you had talked about doing a rapid-fire question thing. This is where we ask the wrestlers 10 different questions, just off-the-wall questions, and Gage had mentioned, well, why don't we do it for each other? So we're going to start out by asking each other a little question here. I guess I'll start. Bears or Vikings? Gage?
Ooh, Vikings. Just because of TJ Hawkinson, I'm a big Iowa fan. I can't think of a Bear that was a former Hawkeye off the top of my head.
Shane?
I'm gonna have to say that I'm wearing I'm wearing a Green Bay Packers jersey as we broadcast here,
and that's what gave me the idea for this. I said he's in a Packers jersey. He hates one of them.
Well, I'm a Packers fan as of the last 20 years. That's my wife and family's go-to team. But I will say Bears because my brother has followed them with passion since the days of Walter Payton, and he literally lives and dies with every win and loss, and he's been dying a lot lately. So,
Danny, I have a real dad joke, though, and Shane will appreciate this one.
All right.
So why does Iowa not have I might have told this one to you guys. Why does Iowa not have a professional football team, an NFL football team?
I don't know.
Because then Minnesota would need one.
Oh,
You could say Illinois, too. You could say Illinois, and then it's. I put that for you, Shane. That's Packers' favorite joke there.
That's a good border joke.
and alienate all of our Minnesota and Illinois fans.
Hey, I think the Chamber of Commerce from Council Bluffs.
Council Bluffs?
Yeah, I think
they're
probably
already mad at us.
Yeah, they're probably crafting us a
I
nice
called
email
Council
right now.
Bluffs the armpit Iowa in the last episode.
I got my last one here, guys. Who do you like better, Stones or Beatles?
Beatles.
Ooh, I'll say Stones just to be different, but I was thinking Beatles too.
All right, so we're split there.
I have a running argument with the band instructor at New London. He's a big John Lennon fan. I'm a Paul McCartney fan, and I think John Lennon might be the best songwriter that ever lived.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go.
This is Gage. What are you going to do? What you got?
So, would you rather have a quick pin? I'm talking within 20 seconds, quick pin, match is over. Or would you rather have a dominating technical fall that takes almost all of the 3 periods?
I'm going to speak about a former wrestler. He lives in New London right now. His name's Tom Corcoran. He ended up getting third like in 1983. And I would watch him wrestle because his brother Rick was my close friend at that time. And shout out to Rick out in Belleville, Illinois. He preferred the long, drawn-out tech fall. He liked to work on some moves. He liked to work on setting up moves. And he would just toy with these guys. And I'm like, why don't you pin him? And he goes, I got to work on stuff. So I'm going to go with the long, prolonged tech fall.
I want to go in there and get my job done and go eat some ice cream.
Hey, pins were 6,
Yeah.
techs were 5. But, Shane likes the practice. You're maybe get better from the tech.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my second one. Would you rather be on or a part of a dominant tournament wrestling team or a dominant dual wrestling team? Now, I can talk about the difference. So a lot of the dual teams, they just don't really have maybe the weak spots, but possibly they don't have all the hammers out there, but there's just not an easy win for the opponent. Whereas the tournament team, a lot of pinners, a lot of guys getting those bonus victories. And, if half your team's hammers, even if you have some weak spots, you still are going to rack up the points. So dominant tournament versus dominant duel, which would you rather have?
Shane?
I think the dominant duel would be a more representation of a true quality wrestling team. And Gage, I know you're a track star from the past and probably could still compete with some of these local kids. But you and I might agree on this. As a former track coach, I always thought that since there's 24 people at the state track meet, shouldn't the 24th place guy get a 1-team point? Because I would send some maybe 8 or 9 kids up there, and only one would place. So it doesn't look like we did very well. But in fact, most of those kids got somewhere between 13th and 15th or 16th or something like that.
Yeah.
It would have made the team feel like, man, we're really heading for something. So since 24 is now the new wrestling number, it seems like something that could be looked at.
What do you think, Danny?
What was the question?
Duel versus tournament.
Duel. Yeah, duel. Yeah,
There's something about when you turn the lights down, I don't know, and it's mono,
Yeah.
I will say, though, in 2018, we got 4th in girls 2A, just speaking of track, and we won 3 titles that year, and we only won 1 meet the whole year. And I would take that and win 3 titles down at state over winning a bunch of meets. So, I don't know. My cousin Sam at Southeast Polk took his team to Glenwood this last weekend, yesterday, and they also took a picture with 10 guys holding up a bracket. So there's something cool about that too at the end of a long weekend. But I don't know, something about turning down the lights and 1v1, send your best guy out, we'll send our best guy out, and rack up the scoreboard and see where we are at the end. So I'm with you on the duel, I think.
Danny, I was accepted at law school, so if I start rambling on, cut me off. Give me a signal. Do something.
Okay. We got another question from Gage?
Those were mine.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to throw out these.
This is Shane.
This is something that's just a little off the wall, perhaps. Big fan of medical shows. So ER or Grey's Anatomy?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. This is maybe going to lose me some street cred, but we're a big Grey's Anatomy household. When I first started dating my now wife, I don't know, almost 10 years ago now, I hated it and thought it was the stupidest show in the world. And then when it's on enough, you grow to love it, I think. So we're a Grey's Anatomy household. Don't hold that against me, please.
Danny?
I'd have to say ER, only because it's easier to spell. I've never watched either of them. Don't get the applause button out.
Well, I'm a ER person. I've watched every episode. I bought them all when they got on DVDs, and I watched every show now that they're on Hulu. And Grey's Anatomy just strikes me as people going in for a routine checkup and going out and making out in the hall with the doctor, and that just doesn't happen. So we're going ER. And greatest crime movie, Goodfellas, Casino, or Scarface?
Oh. Gage?
I like Scarface. I mean, there's some one-liners in there that people that have not seen the movie, I mean, all three you could say that for, but people that haven't seen the movie at least know, the say hello to my little friend. And then you can apply that to so many objects. It doesn't even have to be a gun, so I don't know. I'll go with Scarface because of that.
I don't know. I'd have to say Goodfellas. I know The Godfather was the game changer, but Goodfellas really glamorized that lifestyle. And then you got Casino. So I'd have to go with Goodfellas.
I'm going to go with Casino. I know exactly what's going to happen. And for those of you who are listening and have never seen it, there's a scene in a cornfield that will keep you awake at night.
Yes,
so
it will.
We're going to go with Casino for me.
All right. And we're done with our rapid fire question section here. Shane, you did a interview.
Yeah, I got Kane Forseen. He is our 113, probably wrestling at 120 these days, but I think he's going to eventually get to 113. He's an up-and-comer. He is ranked 9th now. Caught him in the hallway and gave him a quick 5-minute interview, and I think we're going to hear a lot of things about Mr. Forseen in the upcoming future.
All right, let's have a listen.
This is Shane Barron of the Wrestlecast, and I found Kane Forseen, who is currently ranked 9th at 113 or 120. Now, I heard you might go down to 113. Is that true?
I mean, it's a possibility, but I don't know yet.
Can you explain how the time limits are involved? Do you have to certify here in the next couple of weeks?
So we get this ascension plan after they take our body fat test multiple times in the year. I think we got another one coming up. And you have to have so much percent body fat, and you can drop so many pounds a week to go to a weight class or gain so many pounds a week. And for me, it'd be like 2.5 pounds a week. I can go 113, but I can only lose 2.5 pounds a week. So
I see.
I wouldn't be able to go 113 till January.
Okay. So that is just a future plan for you, or just a future thing you have to look at. How's your season been going so far?
Pretty good. I've had some pretty tough matches. I've wrestled 9 matches. My only loss to the number 6 ranked 120 pounder.
And do you remember his name?
No, but I remember he was from Central Springs.
Central Springs, okay. Would he be in your upcoming path to go to state, perhaps? The same wrestler?
I would wrestle him at state.
Oh, at state.
Yeah.
Okay. How'd that match go? Can you kind of describe it?
I just tied up with him hard. He clubbed me hard at the beginning of the match. I wasn't expecting it, and he hit a nice shot. I whizzed him hard and left my elbow up, and he cow-catchered me and pinned me in the first period.
So you won't do that again. No. What brings you to New London?
Just my dad's whole side of the family went here, and it's just I've always went to Mount Pleasant, but I was raised around everything here from New London.
Okay, what's your you described some moves that you got caught up in. What is your favorite move to put on some guy?
My favorite takedown at the moment right now is probably my high crotch to a double finish, but I like to run arm bars or tilts on top.
Okay, can you just describe what it's been like to come from Mount Pleasant? Is that true?
Yeah,
okay.
I came from Mount Pleasant. It's a lot different because it's a lot smaller, but I like it more because about everybody I have in my first period class, I'll have in all my other classes through the day.
Do you regret not coming here earlier and having me as a teacher?
Yeah, not just because you as a teacher, but yeah, I kind of wish I would have came here earlier just because, like...
Now, in all seriousness, if you come here earlier, and leave me out of it, I'm just trying to get you to laugh.
Yeah.
But if you came here earlier, would you be more comfortable with the New London wrestling culture?
Not super. I've always been pretty comfortable with it because when I was a little kid, my dad helped coach here and everything.
So what does the upcoming weeks look like for you? You're going to have a long break with Christmas coming up. Is there any upcoming tournaments for you immediately?
This Friday and Saturday is a 2-day Fort Madison tournament. Friday, I should wrestle around 3 or 4 matches. And if I win them, I win my pool. They call it like this pool rounds. And then Saturday, I'd go wrestle in the gold bracket if I won my pool. And that would put me higher in the rankings for districts and stuff later on in the year.
The Fort Madison tournament, for those of you who don't know, and I could learn a few things here too, that features Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, just any class, 3A, big school Illinois, just you're going to see about everybody that's good. Yeah. So what's your thoughts going into that tournament? You were supposed to, for those of you who don't know, we're taping this on a Thursday night, and New London was supposed to wrestle tonight, and maybe you've tuned up a little bit, but that got canceled. So what does Thursday night look like for you as you prepare for Fort Madison?
Tonight, I think we're going to just work on perfecting our shots and our bottom work because we've been pretty harsh on bottom lately. We haven't been the greatest, but we've been working on bottom and top a lot and get a good sweat broke.
Okay.
Go home and get ready for the weekend.
You described the one time you got taken off guard a little bit. What's been your biggest victory so far this year?
At the Jeremy Folk Classic this year, the first tournament, I beat, can't remember if he's ranked number 5 or 6 at 113, but I beat Gage Samo, and that put me ranked number 9 from Waco. Yeah,
Gage Samo of Waco. We're going to try to talk to Gage before too long. Kane, good to talk to you, and good luck for the upcoming season.
Thank you.
And we're getting into high school rankings right now. Gage, I know that Columbus Winfield Mount Union made a splash.
Yeah, they moved up to 10th in 2A. We'll start with 3A. We're going to, here in a little bit in the show, we're going to go into some of the results from the last week. But Southeast Polk has been dominant. They seem to still be the team that's being chased. They have a freshman that we talked about, Nico, at 106, who moved in from out of state, who just kind of gets things going in their lineup. He's undefeated so far this year in his high school career as a freshman. But Southeast Polk, and then Bettendorf, who fared very well at the Battle of Waterloo, they're second. Fort Dodge is third. Waukee Northwest has been wrestling really well early on. They're not in there. And then Perennial Power, Waverly Shell Rock's fourth. Johnston, Indianola is sixth. Look for them to move up. They look really good. They won the Battle of Waterloo. So they're going to be in the trophy hunt. And then Bondurant Farrar and Dubuque Hempstead went down to Fort Madison and they won it. There's some other 3As. There's a lot of 2As and 1As at that tournament as well. But, you know, that's your top 8 in Class 3A. And honestly, I could see all 8 of those teams coming away with the team trophy at the state wrestling individual tournament. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how that shakes out.
I'm going to tackle 2A for our listeners. Number 1 team still Osage. Mount Vernon is going to give teams trouble. Mount Vernon always gets those Iowa City kids that maybe don't want to be at Iowa City for any reason whatsoever. And Creston, way out there west. Glenwood is number 4. Algona is 5. Ballard of Huxley is 6.
Sergeant Bluff Luton, okay. And Davenport Assumption rounds out the 1, 2, 3, 4, top 7 of Class 2A. Yeah, and 2 of those in that Hawkeye 10, you mentioned Creston and Glenwood. In that 2A, you see a little more spread out all over Iowa, almost every corner covered there. 3A, there's just not as many of those as those schools. Osage is a school that has just been dominant as well so far. They have just a couple studs in their lineup. The thing that'll be interesting, Danny, you mentioned before we go into 1A, you mentioned Columbus Winfield Mount Union. It's really important to be top 8 at the end of the regular season the dual season, because what happens is those top 8 get a bye and they host regional duels, and then two teams are on the other side. They wrestle each other And then the winner of that goes to the state duels, which is now much earlier than the individual tournament. So that's why I just grabbed the top 8 here. But going into 1A, Don Bosco, the clear favorite. Wilton's looked really good. They're number 2. Alburnett, though, you could argue that they're the second best team in 1A. I think that's a good matchup there between those two to maybe compete with Don Bosco, but Don Bosco just looks so dang good. Lake Mills and Nashua Plainfield and West Hancock, all 3 have hammers that should win some individual titles. It's just a matter of, can their other guys, give them a shot to really get top 3 and win a team trophy. And then Hinton and Logan Magnolia. Logan Magnolia, is always there with a bunch of guys. They're really, really good. Dan Thompson's their coach out there, former Westwood coach. And so, they could be there at the end of the year too. But yeah, those are your high school rankings, top 8 in every class.
And we had some milestones over this past week. A couple wrestlers had their 100th win. We had a coach that got win number 300.
Yeah, so Addison Musser of North Cedar got her 100th pin. And then sticking with girls, Sigourney Keota's Rihanna Utterback got her 100th win for Sigourney Keota. The Savages, right? Naomi Simon of Decorah got her 100th pin. Tully Wood of Wayne was the conference champ. What do you think of that? Conference tournaments before Christmas. That's pretty early before Christmas to have a conference championship, but he got his 100th win, was the 132-pound champion. And then Dave Wanger of Albia got his 100th win. He's coached some studs. Reeves, one of the most recent, just absolute terrors in the state of Iowa, graduated probably 3 years ago now. So yeah, and then there was a wrestler out of Iowa City High who also just won his 100th match as well. Lisbon, Tyrion Boots. Yeah, a lot of accomplishment. I'm sure we didn't cover them all, Danny, but just a couple from around Iowa here.
We were going to have a wrap-up on that, but our correspondent up there was sick the past few days, so we were unable to have that, but got some other stuff. Matt Nerem is the coach at Tipton. Jamie Meyer, our correspondent there up in Tipton, with the Tipton Tigercast, had an interview with Matt Nerem.
So let's talk about some names here. So give the fans kind of an idea. You said you've got 9 girls back. Who are some of the girls that you've been, that have really been off to a good start this season, or have kind of picked up where they kind of left off last year?
Yeah, right. So Becca Hindracher and Coda Fogg are our 2 returning state qualifiers from last year, and they both, like you said, picked up kind of where they left off. They've both been wrestling really well. I think we've been to 5 tournaments maybe so far, and Becca and Coda have each won a couple of those tournaments. They won them all, but they've been in the top 3, I think, probably at every tournament we've been to. Sadie Hamilton's another one that is actually, she's our most seasoned wrestler. She wrestled not only last year, but the previous year to that with the boys team.
That's correct.
And she was a place winner at the regional meet last year, just not quite high enough to get to the state meet, but obviously had a great season last year, and she's kind of picked up. She's been in the finals at, I think, in 4 of the 5 tournaments we've been at, so she's been wrestling really well. Katie Christ won the first meet that we went to at City High, and has been a place winner in a couple other tournaments. She's also been hampered by some injuries and stuff, and some sickness too. But and then Addie Nerem is the first year. This year, I think she's finished in the top 3 at 4 of the 5 tournaments that we've gone to. So she's a senior this year. Decided she wanted to
give it a whirl.
She told me a week before the season, Dad, I want to wrestle. And she's actually dual sporting, so hasn't been able to be at as many practices as she would like. But I think she's doing well just because she's been around it and seen it her whole life, so I think that has helped, obviously, for her to pick up some things. So I'm sure we've got some other girls. Anna Thomas is a senior. So we have 3 seniors on the team: Anna, Becca, and Addie. Anna's been in the finals of at least 3 of the tournaments, maybe 4 of the tournaments we've been in. So she's having a really good year too. I'm trying to think of who I'm forgetting here, but Meredith Coppice is another returner, and then we have a freshman in Nevaeh Carpenter. Also, they've also both shown some really good things at times, and are really kind of passionate about the sport of wrestling. So,
well, good. Hey, well, thanks for your time today.
You bet. Thanks.
All right. I want to thank Jamie Meyer for that interview, and we'll post the rest of that here on the YouTube site. Dan Stacy was at the Olwine tournament. He's with the Husky Cast up in Olwine. I believe Sumner Fredericksburg was there. Maybe Central Elkader and Hudson. I forget, maybe one more. But Dan files this report.
Okay, Dan Stacy reporting from Husky Gymnasium in Olwine, Iowa tonight. A great night of wrestling here in Olwine. It was Olwine and Sumner Fredericksburg and Central Elkader. And the Hudson Pirates wrestling tonight in boys action in Olwine versus Elkader Central and Sumner Fredericksburg in girls action. A great night of wrestling. Hudson, a really good boys wrestling team. So is Elkader or Sumner Fredericksburg. Hudson barely beat Sumner Fredericksburg in boys action, 42-39, the best meet of the night. Here's how the rest of it shook out. The Olwine boys over Elkader Central, 47-12. Also, it was in a final, the Olwine boys over, or the Olwine girls over Elkader Central, 42-24. The Hudson boys over the Olwine boys, 60-15. The Sumner Fredericksburg boys over the Olwine boys wrestling team, 60-12. In girls wrestling, it was Sumner Fredericksburg over Elkader Central. Turned out to be pretty good though, 48-24. In boys action, Sumner Fredericksburg over Olwine, 51-24. And in girls action, Elkader Central over Sumner by a score of 46-30 this evening. So a great night of wrestling here in Olwine. So altogether, it was Hudson coming out the better of it. They won all of their meets tonight here in Olwine in front of a great crowd here at Husky Gymnasium. I'm Dan Stacy reporting. Thank you for tuning in tonight. If you listened on both the either the Husky Cast or the Cougar Cast at www.thehuskycast.com or www.thecougarcast.com. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan. And another one we'll just wrap up here with Dwayne Nolan. He's with the Mediapolis News. He was at the Mediapolis Triangular on Thursday, and he interviewed Coach Seth Pugh of Waco, Damon Lloyd of New London, and Mark Griffin, the coach of Mediapolis.
We are here at the Mediapolis Wrestling Triangular with Notre Dame, West Burlington, and Danville wrestling coach Bill Pleen. Bill, kind of, if you can give us your thoughts on how the meet went tonight, and kind of how has the team done throughout the season so far?
We're a young team at certain spots. We have some good kids at the bottom, and we have some young kids at the top, and I thought the young kids really came through for us tonight.
Okay, and how's the season been going for you guys?
It's like I said, we're a young team and we're learning and building all the time, so we're still a work in progress.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
We are here at Mediapolis High School with Mediapolis wrestling coach Mark Griffin after the Mediapolis Triangular against Meepo against Waco, and Notre Dame, West Burlington, Danville. And Mark, kind of how did things go for the guys tonight, and kind of what are some of your thoughts on how the season's been going so far?
We're a young team. We got freshmen and sophomores. There's no upperclassmen. All I expect them to do is go out and battle tough, and that's what they've been doing. I mean, they understand that it's a process, and it's going to take time to grow, and I believe they can if they trust in the process and keep putting that work in, which they are. So time will tell, and I believe in them, and excited to see their futures.
Who do you think had a really good night tonight?
Kyler went 2-0. I believe Parker went 2-0. So, my sophomores are doing pretty well. They took their licks as freshmen last year, and they definitely learned from it. So hopefully it reciprocates with the freshmen now coming back next year even stronger.
Okay, yeah, and then you guys are heading down to Keokuk then this weekend, right?
No, Keokuk was last week.
Oh, I mean Fort Madison, excuse me.
Yeah, we got Fort Madison tomorrow, and on Saturday that's varsity, and then JV's heading to Wilton.
Oh, okay. Pretty good competitive places up both places.
Oh yeah, Fort Madison's probably our toughest varsity tournament other than state, so we're going to see what we're made of tomorrow, and hopefully we keep battling. It's going to be our longest week so far with having to go Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Usually we're just Thursday and Saturday, so that's why we do this tournament. Just we got to reciprocate like state. State's 4 days now, so you got to have that wrestling consecutive days.
Okay, and things tonight went off without a hitch.
Yeah. I mean, we battled tough. We wrestled Waco. We won a lot of matches there. Notre Dame's always really tough competition, but we never backed down, and that's what I'm proud of. So, just keep trusting in the process, putting the work in, and we'll get there.
Here we have Waco coach Seth Pugh. Seth, I just have a couple of questions for you. Kind of what are some of your thoughts on how the guys did tonight? And kind of if you can talk a little bit how the season's been going for the Warriors so far.
Well, we had some guys that went out and competed pretty well tonight. I mean, we ran into Notre Dame. They're solid. I think we lost the duel by 70-some points, but I mean, we got a lot of new guys, so they're going to get better. They're going to keep working, so we're not going to hang our heads on that. Other than that, the rest of the season, we got a couple guys that have been getting quite a few wins, and we got some new guys that are just learning. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the numbers that we have and the fact that we go out there and compete.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
All right.
This is Shane Barron, and we're going to try to give you some more of the details of some really humongous tournaments that were happening in our area this week, and probably the most notable for local people would be the Fort Madison tournament. We have some results from that. This is a tournament that features teams from Illinois, teams from Missouri, regardless of class. I talked to Kane Forseen before the tournament started, and he kind of led us to believe that this was one of the better tournaments in the whole state, and judging by the results, I have to agree with him. Fort Madison was 10th at their own tournament, and Burlington came in 14th. Mediapolis and New London was 15th and 16th, respectively. Keokuk and Van Buren were there as well. L&M was 19th, Keokuk 20th, and Van Buren was 22nd. So, I mean, that's a lot of teams. That's a lot of kids. So you are getting kind of an initial taste of just who's going to make a good run here at the state, state levels. Carter West was probably the most notable. He's from West Burlington, Notre Dame. They're a 2A power. They'll be getting on our list for team rankings here very soon. He was first. C.J. Davis, also of West Burlington, Notre Dame, was first in this tournament. Cale Cook at 138. Blake Wilson at 144, and Derek Boyles at 150 are all second place finishers for West Burlington Notre Dame. Coley Boyles at 106 was third. Burlington's Braxton Hutchinson at 106 made a good show. He defeated Dubuque Hempstead's Eli Heifert 7-2. Columbus Winfield combination, Russell Coyle, injury default winner at 285. New London's Kane Forseen was second at 120. Gage Burden was fourth at 132. And Michael Raines was sixth. And that's New London's best people. And just to give you some examples of just how big this tournament, Marcel Lopez, Dominic Lopez, they would get first and second in this tournament. So Nolan Riddle from Fort Madison, he was a champ at 157. That is just a tip of the iceberg of some of the local results that we had, and it just shows that Southeast Iowa wrestling is strong regardless of what state you're talking about.
I went down yesterday and watched, and so they had 5 mats at this thing. The 5th mat was kind of behind the bleachers in their wrestling room, and so there's wrestlers that were confused because they thought they were wrestling in the gym, and then they had to run back there and wrestle in the wrestling room. But it made it, very unique. When you got to the medal placings, it was pretty intense. So how they did it Friday was round robin, and based on how you did, you got placed in one of 3 brackets. If you were in the lower bracket, you wrestled that out, but you could only get up to a certain place, up to 17th. If you're in the middle bracket, you could get up to 9th. And then if you're in the gold bracket, you were going to be in the top 8. It was just a matter of where. So, that shows you how big the tournament is. Dubuque Hempstead, we talked about them, Shane, in the rankings. Number 8 in 3A, they won it. Clear Creek Amana was right behind them. A little bit of a gap, and then it went Ottumwa, 10th ranked, CJWMU, and West Burlington Notre Dame on real close in the team scores. One thing, you mentioned a lot of West Burlington Notre Dame. One thing that I just thought was pretty cool, they had tons of kids in the finals. But you have Coach Plains and Coach Siegel in a corner. Those are 2 Hall of Famers that have won so many wrestling duels and tournaments over the years. I mean, and then you have Johnny Siegel, who was just off the mat, coaching kids, but not necessarily in the corner because you can only have the 2 coaches. I mean, West Burlington Notre Dame is as good of a coach team as you could possibly have. The best match of the tournament, I thought, was 144 pounds, 23-0, undefeated Tucker Wheeler of PCM, Prairie City Monroe, won in sudden victory over Blake Wilson, 13-11. So Wilson tied it up with a minute to go with a takedown. He was trailing in sudden victory. Just one of the best scrambles that you could see between Wilson and Wheeler. And both guys could have came up with it, and Wheeler ended up coming out on top. But, it was just an amazing match. It was intense. The Prairie City Monroe people were sitting right in front of me, and they were going absolutely crazy. You talked about Russ Coyle winning the championship for CJWMU in the finals. This wasn't a malicious thing, but he knocked out the PCM Monroe wrestler, Caden Clark, in a legal move on kind of the edge of the mat. They just kind of, on a takedown attempt, collided heads, and Clark went to stand up. He got wobbly, and he about went to the ground. They stopped for about 5 minutes, and then he ended up doing the right thing and just medically forfeiting because he obviously wasn't good to go. But, it shows you how good of a tournament this is when you just look at some of the runner-ups you said, and you could throw out like Ty Scorpel, who's off to an amazing start for WMU. CJ, he got 3rd at 126. Davis, you said won it. He only has 2 losses on the year, and that's in this tournament also. So, yeah, Fort Madison was loaded, and I was looking, you were saying previous winners, so I brought the program with me. So West was one of the few that defended his title from last year. But you just look at some of these previous champs. Glenending from, I said that right, didn't I, Danny? Glendenning, thank you. Finalist last year. Walrath, finalist, champ. Dominic Lopez, champion. You just go through there. You go from year to year. This goes all the way back to 2002. Russell Weekly, 4-time champ from Fort Madison. I was just looking at this. There's over 50 state champs from the last 20 years, and that's just guys that I knew won state titles that won this tournament. So you said it, Shane. I mean, it's a pretty elite tournament in the state of Iowa, and I was just looking at some of the teams that have come over the years. They drive 4 or 5 hours to get there, and I know a lot of them stayed overnight. So yeah, it's definitely becoming a premier tournament in the state of Iowa.
You spoke with TJ Nutt over the week.
Yeah, I gave him a couple rapid fire questions. Tried to think of things that, are wrestling related, especially due to like nutrition and just what wrestlers have to do to kind of keep themselves, in shape and have the strength to go out and do what they do while also keeping weight. So hope you enjoy.
All right, that was TJ Nutt, and TJ was him from being a wrestler, MVACOU.
Yeah, he was my student. He actually, when I did this interview, I was in my office, and I had a basketball from his 8th grade year that he signed. He never had wrestled before junior high. He lost a bet, which we talk about in the interview with the wrestling coach, so he goes out. By his junior year, he becomes pretty good. I think a unique perspective from him is, one, starting late and showing that you can still become a good wrestler, even if you don't wrestle from the time, you come out of the womb. And then the other one, is just his junior year was the last year, as of now, of the 16-person individual tournament, and his senior year was the first year of the 24. And just kind of, some of the differences there, I thought, that's a unique spot to be in. So hope you enjoy. We're joined now on the Wrestlecast with TJ Squirrel Nutt, 2-time wrestling qualifier. I wrestled at 132 and 126 pounds for most of your high school career. TJ, you're a big college kid now. How's that going for you?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I mean, it's kind of weird not doing any sports, but yeah, still keeping up with the wrestling.
We were talking about how you're in the sports sports management. What's your official major?
Sports media marketing.
Sports media marketing. So maybe there'll be a day where you're mat side calling some big time, wrestling duels or tournaments or something. That'd be pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Since graduating, I know we were talking a little about what you were doing, I believe it was last weekend. How have you kind of stayed connected to the sport of wrestling?
I stayed connected I've been off break since December 2nd, and I've just been helping out with the wrestling high school program back in my old high school and doing some voluntary head coaching, or assistant coaching, I should say. Just helping out the little guys and, just being there, giving them some competition to roll around with, just getting them ready.
I'm sure they appreciate it. Last year when you were wrestling at state, the whole school went to the gym, at elementary and high school, to kind of watch you and Colby compete. So I'm sure that you're very, looked up to. But I wanted to go back to a day where you were a wrestler and a basketballer. And you're pretty good at both. What led you to choose wrestling, or was that always what you were going to do and you were just basketballing just to kind of, hang out with your buddies and stay active?
So in middle school we did both wrestling, and we got the option to do both because they were different seasons. But I lost a bet to my former head coach, Steven Schaefer. It was a bet because he absolutely hates radishes, and I bet him that he couldn't eat a certain amount, and he did. And then I went out my middle school, ended up liking it more than I should have, and then decided to pursue wrestling instead of basketball in high school.
So if it wasn't for that bet with Coach Schaefer, you probably would have never even tried wrestling.
Nope, because I tried it in kindergarten, but then I didn't like it, so I just quote unquote retired for the time being, and then just played basketball ever since.
Well, it worked out for you. You won over 100 matches. You were a 2-time state qualifier. And by the time you were done, when it was all said and done, you were pretty dang good. I wanted to talk to you just about those 2 state qualifying runs that you had. They were your junior and senior year. What is kind of the difference when you see a wrestler as an upperclassman versus, those first couple years? Even if they've wrestled their whole life or, like you, maybe hopped in the middle, what is the difference when you see those guys kind of later on in their high school career?
You just see them as other opponents. It doesn't matter how skillful they are or how big or how long they've wrestled. Your mindset should be just go out there and just do your best. I mean, it's all just a mental game. There's some physicality to it, which, wrestling is a physical sport, but it's just a lot more mental side and more technique, and then just physicality. I know for a fact I wrestled a guy that wrestled his whole life and actually wrestled at Disney duels, and I've only wrestled fully since middle school, and I ended up beating him in overtime to go to the district tournament my junior year.
So you had an interesting match last year towards the end of the season where 113-pounder who got 6th at nationals ended up being a state champion from Akron Westfield last year. Kale Morrow bumped up to wrestle you. I believe he bumped 2 weight classes, and it was a really good match. I mean, he's one of the best wrestlers in the state of Iowa. And you guys, it was a really exciting match between the two of you. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is that a way to just, in the wrestling world, gain instant respect when a guy bumps a couple classes to go wrestle somebody good?
Yeah, certainly it is. I mean, Wrestling 26, I thought I was going to face one of my seeding opponents, our state, but he actually got injured and broke his ankle, so he tried wrestling through that, but he sat out that meet actually. Yeah, because that meet I was supposed to wrestle Jaden Fredericks, so 126, and then Ethan Shout, but they didn't wrestle him because they thought I would beat him. So they ended up bumping Kale, and going into that match, I just thought it was just another opponent. I mean, I have nothing to lose, considering he's a returning state runner-up, and I just thought out there, just go attack, and whatever happens, happens. If I get pinned, oh well, it doesn't really matter. The confidence I gained after knowing that I came close to beating a state champ, even though he was 2 weight classes, he bumped up. But at the same time, the skill set's still there. So that was probably one of my biggest takeaways my senior year.
If you had the choice between going out and wrestling somebody that you know you're just going to tear apart and pin, or go out and wrestle a match like that with, Akron Westfield's Cale Morrow, who's now a 2-time finalist, a champ, top-ranked wrestler now nationally, but knowing there's maybe a higher chance it's going to be a 50-50 match, you could win, you could lose, which one would you pick?
I would definitely pick wrestling the stage, yeah. I mean, you could always go out and go pin someone in 7 seconds, get a school record, but you won't get anything out of it as opposed to wrestling someone that has a higher skill set than you and getting used to facing competition.
I will say I was in the gym that night. I think it was at Lawton Bronson, if I remember right. And, the whole gym, even people that weren't Akron Westfield or MVACOU fans, turned their attention to that match. And it was a lot of fun. It was exciting. And, even though he just edged you slightly, it was still a lot of fun. And you could see the respect between the two of you. So that was fun.
All right, that was TJ Nutt, and we couldn't post the entire interview here on the podcast, so we'll post that here on the site. Be looking for that.
So, Gage, you talked to how he didn't wrestle once he came out of the womb, and I found that very interesting because you and I are both probably in the same boat. We see junior high wrestling coaches. They're trying to get kids to go out. Some are willing to try it, some aren't. But I think most of the kids don't want to try it because they feel like with all the youth tournaments that go on, they're already playing with one hand behind their back, and they just don't even want to get out there and give it an effort. Have you seen that in the Winfield situation, or can you talk about that?
There's a school, a town in this area that has huge wrestling ties that people probably don't think about because they don't have a high school anymore, and that's Morning Sun. Where Winfield's positioned, Morning Sun's about the same distance from Columbus Junction, and so both have youth programs, Columbus Junction and Morning Sun. And what a lot of our kids do is they go over and they wrestle in the Morning Sun youth program, it's run really well. There's a lot of good people, and so I think you definitely have a leg up, but so many things change when you get older. I think if you can get in there by junior high or right before, it's not too late. We have a guy, Cooper Buffington and Colby Newsom, who are juniors who came out for the first time this year. And I think what we're seeing with them, both great athletes, but they don't have the technique and positioning that the other guys have. So I think there's a sweet spot. I think if you wait, until you're a little later, like my cousin Sam was born with the singlet in his hand, Sam Lloyd, but he really didn't start wrestling a bunch of tournaments. He just practiced for several years. He didn't do the kindergarten thing where, my uncle Damon Lloyd, he lied about his age when I think he was 4 to say he was older and wrestled because his older brothers all wrestled, and he was the younger one. You also see a lot of burnout too, to those guys that wrestle too early. So I'd say, if you don't wrestle right away, the sweet spot is probably right before junior high to start, so you can still start getting those skills as you're about to go through puberty.
This goes for all sports. This is a wrestling podcast, but do the travel teams for baseball and softball, do they burn out before they even get to high school now? It's a no-win situation, really. The only thing I can say is I see a lot of kids as a middle school teacher who I encourage them to give it a try. Give it, and they say, Mr. Barron, I tried it in 3rd grade and I'm not good at it. And I'm like, well, maybe you're good now, give it a shot. It's one of those things that fascinates me about youth sports, and as a PE teacher, you can kind of see where I'm going with that. But I was interested to hear his answer there.
Yeah, and I think one thing, real good discussion that we had, one of my wrestlers to kind of watch this year is Cale Morrow, 2-time finalist last year. He was the champ, so he's then tried to defend his title from Akron Westfield. You talked about travel sports. There's these duels where you might not have anybody very good at your weight. And so TJ last year had a duel at Lawton Bronson where Cale Morrow was at 113, TJ was at 126. And Cale Morrow, like I said, went on to win the title that year. TJ was a ranked wrestler, former, qualifier as a junior. Cale Morrow bumped up 2 weights to go wrestle him. Just because he knew, it'd be a good match for him, even though he was outweighed by about 15 pounds based on what they weighed in. and ended up being a great match. You know, even though some of these guys are levels above, you know, you have the guys that, come out late or just aren't very good. Some are levels above. There's still ways to get competitive matches. And, you know, all eyes were on that match in that gym that night. And Morrow ended up beating TJ by decision. But that's kind of the exciting part. The last part of that interview, we talked about which is better, the 16 or the 24 person state tournament. And I think that's just, a big difference between college and high school. The college has 32 guys. It's a huge tournament, but there's one class. High school now has 24, but there's 3 classes, and there's all the districts all over the state of Iowa. In the college game, there's only a few conferences. Mm-hmm. Like in NCAA basketball, there's like 25 conferences. So in wrestling, I had to look this up because it's weird. It's not the same conferences. There's the Big 10, there's the Pac-12, there's the Big 12, the ACC. Those are kind of the big ones. And then there's the MAC, and then there's the EIWA, Eastern Intercollegiate Wrestling Association, and then there's the Southern Conference. And that's it. Those are all the conferences. And how it works in the college game is they look to see which conference and which weight is good and which isn't. And before those conference tournaments, they decide how many automatic qualifiers will go. Mm-hmm. So like going into the Big Tens, they might say at 125, we're going to have, all 10 guys are going to go. Or, usually it's 8 or 6 or something like that. Maybe in the Southern Conference, it's, hey, we're just going to let the top 2 go. It's way different. What are your thoughts on that process? I mean, is it a good process in the college side, to kind of predetermine how many, and then if you win it, you automatically go, obviously, but otherwise it's just kind of predetermined.
As an Iowa, follower and Iowa State follower, you're like, you got 7th in your own conference tournament, but those guys end up getting 7th in the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten is way more difficult. Basketball has leveled off to the point where, you can get a Maryland, Baltimore County to win a couple of rounds, and Florida Gulf Coast. You just don't see that in wrestling too much.
Sure.
But then again, you start doing the research on some of these guys, and wrestling is so. I didn't want to wrestle at Iowa because I didn't like Iowa City or something, so they wrestle at Cornell. The Ivy League is turned into a super good conference for wrestling, and you go, oh, he's from Penn, or remember all those Iowa fans that went berserk over not dominating Penn like they should have? Well, Penn's a good wrestling team, so you kind of see perhaps maybe a little too much credibility given to maybe one conference over the other because of reputation, and Big Ten's probably guilty of that.
Sure.
It happens in football all the time. Florida State fans probably give us a quick email about how they feel they got ripped off, but you got to come up with some system, and you're a track person. I was a track coach. You might have a kid that didn't qualify for state that could have finished 8th, but the wind was against him or something. I mean, you got to have a cutoff somewhere. It's another conundrum, as the Riddler might say. That's what makes it fun, I guess.
Yeah, and that's honestly what I kind of like about it. If I had to say the pros, I was maybe a little anti there for a second, but like right now, the ACC looks to be having a good year in the sport of wrestling. And so, when they determine who gets the automatic qualifiers, I would suspect the ACC will get more automatic guys than a normal year, just because of Pitt and NC State and Virginia Tech, North Carolina. I mean, they have some schools with some top-ranked guys that look really good. So these early tournaments and, like the Soldier Salute and the Midlands and the Las Vegas Invitational, all those are a good way to not just help yourself, but also help your conference and to maybe even help your weight class at conference to have a little more prestige and possibly put a couple more numbers on that automatic qualifier list.
When you see NC State's lineup, you realize that they're the number 2 team. And again, I'm a Midwest person, so like NC State, what do they got? So I looked it up, and man, they're loaded. You're absolutely right about the ACC. That's just one of those conferences you don't think of wrestling being that great, and then all of a sudden you do some homework on it. When we go a little bit more in detail of who's coming up this week in wrestling, NC State any year but this one might win the whole national champ. I just can't see Penn State losing, but they've got 8 weight classes where they could have 8 All-Americans.
Absolutely.
We had you and I lost this weekend or this week.
Yeah, I didn't think that was a very good result for UNI. Columbia has received votes in the latest collegiate polls, so it's not like they're a lousy team or anything, but UNI's got some work to do, I think, to catch up, to be in that top 10 level. They're in the top 20, but they're going to need to up their game a bit.
Yeah, I think we'll see at the Soldier Salute, how legit that was. Is Columbia just really good, and Iowa matched up well against Columbia and kind of crushed them, and maybe UNI is really good, or is it more of a UNI isn't as great as normally would? And by the way, UNI is in the Big 12 for wrestling, just so everybody out there knows that. That's kind of, right. SDSU's in there, Wyoming. I mean, it's different. But yeah, did you have some results you want to throw out there from that UNI duel?
I just don't know if UNI is going to be much beyond Parker Kekison at 184. He's still number one, is all I really have on that. But
I know Cale Happel was ranked. Kekison, I thought there was maybe one more, but they didn't really have a lot of ranked guys, where usually there's 4 or 5 scattered across the different weight classes. I wanted to just kind of highlight some of the other good college programs in the state of Iowa. We've talked a lot about Iowa and the Hawkeyes, Iowa State, a little bit about UNI. 2 other there's a lot of, actually, I don't want to pin it down to 2, but I'll start with Grandview. Grandview's won 9 of the last 10 national championships in NAIA. They lost it a few years ago, but otherwise they had a run there going for quite a while. They're 4-0 on the year. They've outscored their opponents in duels 102-16. They haven't even been close. They've just dominated the competition. And then I also wanted to throw out there Wartburg. So Wartburg wrestles in Division 3.
Not Waterbury.
Not Waterbury.
Before we
That's
started,
an inside joke.
Before we started, I don't know, spell checker got me or something, but
that's all right.
We had Waterbury there, and we're going through our phones trying to figure out if Waterbury had a wrestling program.
Oh, what the heck? What were we thinking? But
Happy Gilmore won the Waterbury Open. I know that.
But Wartburg, kind of the same way. And it's not just Wartburg. I mean, Upper Iowa and D2, you could go through the list. I mean, Loris, just all the schools in Iowa have good wrestlers on them because there's good high school wrestlers that go to wrestle in those collegiate programs. Iowa Central, you could go on and on. Just to highlight Wartburg and D3, what they've done so far this year, they're 5-0 in their duels. They have won those 5 duels by a combined 247-9. They are in the hunt for sure for a D3 title. They usually are. I mean, they're usually right there at the end for a team trophy, if not the outright title, as Grandview will be in NAIA. And I mean, how cool would that be if, the Hawks could find a way to get it done and win a D1, D3, and NAIA title all from the same state? I mean, that just kind of tells you, though, the wrestling at the high school level, because they're recruiting guys from out of state, but are also picking up a lot of these in-state guys. And then I know we've talked a little women's wrestling, just to throw them in real quick. The women, Iowa women, ranked number 1. I don't really understand, to be honest with you, the recruiting in women, but they just picked up a bunch of recruits. So in this last week, Grandview got a recruit, Bella Porcelli, the number 8th ranked girl from Southeast Polk. And then the Hawkeyes have picked up 5 recruits, 1 from Illinois, from Florida, and from Arizona, the number 3, 6, and 2 ranked wrestlers, Carly Brooks, Val Solorio, and Cadence Dudish. And then 2 in-state wrestlers, 1 from Decorah, Naomi Simon. She's ranked number 2 at 170. And then Kiara, I'm going to mess with this one up, but we're going to go Dujemi. She's ranked number 7 at 140 from Waverly Shell Rock. So, the Hawkeyes ranked number 1 in the girls' side, which hasn't really taken off yet. But I think as high school girls wrestling takes off, the college game will too. But some big time commits for the Hawkeye women as they, try to insert their dominance into the college game.
Since you brought the women's wrestling scene up, I got a text message to Jake Cadle. I hope he can return it soon, but I know he's busy as heck. But Mia Palumbo, who we have an interview with in our earlier broadcast, I just saw the score of one of her matches, and it's hard to find right now on some of these things, but she lost 2-1 to a woman named Erin Golston. I'm like, maybe Mia Palumbo just isn't up to the level of what I thought, but I'm wrong as usual. But Erin Golston, did a little research on her. She's a 5-time national team member, nationally ranked number 3 at 50 kilograms. I mean, we have Olympic caliber quality athletes just in our own backyard, and I'm hoping that we get a chance to see them and talk to them here in the upcoming weeks. And Palumbo did receive a forfeit from Golston later, probably in the consolation round. But if I read this right, and I'm going to again throw this out, if I read it wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. The top 5 of this senior national tournament held in Fort Worth qualifies you for the Olympic trials. The Olympic trials will be at Penn State this year, and that's in April. So we literally have an Olympic hopeful just an hour and 45 minutes down the road in Mia Palumbo. I'm still waiting for Spencer Lee results. Just love watching him wrestle. He looks to be healthy for the first time, really, truly healthy in a long time. He's got the one knee pad on instead of those 2 leg sleeves that he was wearing last year. He's tech falling his way all the way to the finals. He'll have Miko Megaluchis. I mean, that's a well-known wrestling name, but I just can't pronounce it. But he's in the finals today too. So Alex Marinelli at 165. You have to remind me of the kilogram weights, but he's in the finals as well. So again, this is why we're doing this. We got a lot of wrestlers to start following here, and we're going to do the best for you here at Wrestlecast.
I think Tony Cassiope got in also. I think he was finished 5th. So
he wrestled back and finished 5th.
Yep, he beat Warner, 2 former teammates. So I think you're right, Shane. Top 5 qualify. So a lot of familiar names, a lot of Hawkeyes in there.
UNI's got a tough road ahead of them. They got Ohio State ranked 5th and number 3 North Carolina State. You guys know much about either of those?
Well, I did a little work on Ohio State. They're ranked 5th. They did lose to Pittsburgh recently. Pittsburgh's ranked 13th, so it's nothing too bad, but they're maybe not as loaded as NC State when you start looking at rankings and whatnot, but they have Jesse Mendez at 141. He's ranked number 3. Dylan D'Amelio at number 4, ranked at 149. And I was talking to Gage and Danny before we started broadcasting here. I was like, do you guys know what happened to Sammy Sasso? I know he's a NCAA runner-up from last year, but he's not in the lineup. I wonder what happened. So you hit Google, and it turns out he was shot in August, getting better, but he's having some major rehab going on there. So imagine Ohio State having to replace him. Looks like Dylan D'Amelio is the guy who's taking that over. Patty Gallagher, ranked 13th at 157. Jesse Wilcox, number 21 at 165. A lot of guys that are in that 20 to 15 range. So for a dual meet, that makes them pretty tough. Don't know if that's going to translate to national tournament caliber, but this week will be pretty interesting for both Ohio State and UNI. It's just where do they stand?
I mean, that's a heck of a schedule there. You're UNI, and you got to face Ohio State and North Carolina State, all in. Was it a 3-day?
Yeah,
is that what it was?
It's loaded. We got the Midlands coming up during Christmas break. We got the Soldier Salute. So a lot is going to shake out here in about 2 weeks of who's the contenders and who's the pretenders. Iowa has had some experience lately as kind of not fading down the stretch, but kind of like, are we using up all our, Penn State looks so dominant at the end, and Iowa looks so tired at the end, at least from a fan's perspective. That's what it looks like. So you got to know where you stand, and these next 2 weeks will tell us a lot. But NC State is just 1-0, but that's not to say they're not competing in big-time tournaments, but they're led by a bunch of guys here. Jacob Camacho at 125, he's ranked 2nd. Jack Ryan at 141, he's ranked 4th. Jackson Arrington ranked 5th at 149. Ed Scott ranked 4th at 157. Dylan Fishback 9th at 184. Trent Hidlay number 2 at 197. You'll see them on the podium if they don't get any injuries or whatnot.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said about the fade. Iowa and Penn State have almost the same schedule now. where they have this huge chunk off. Iowa doesn't wrestle again till the Soldier Salute. But you see some teams like NC State, for whatever reason, they're wrestling Lock Haven in Nashville. Is that where that's at? I don't even know where that's at.
Lock Haven might be in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I don't know why they're wrestling in Nashville, but you see some of these other schools, Missouri, some of the top 10 ranked teams right now are still having these duels where these Penn State and Iowa are kind of resting, having finals, getting right, practicing. So that's something that I feel like this was a stretch where Iowa was still having duels in the last couple of years, why Penn State wasn't. Well, the new scheduling, will that be kind of a difference for, the Hawkeyes going into, the Soldier Salute? And when you look at the Soldier Salute, there's a lot of ACC who we've been kind of pumping up, and UNC's there, North Carolina, Virginia's there. You have a lot of Big 12, SDSU, South Dakota State. You have UNI, Wyoming, Iowa State, so all Big 12. But then you also have Missouri, who right now is ranked second in some polls. It's kind of between them and NC State for second and third. So, if Iowa can come out and show that, hey, Brock Mahler, we're going to take you guys on, best name of the program. By the way, we did that last week. He's ranked fifth.
I kind of like the Camacho. In our era, it was Hector Macho Camacho, the boxer.
Yeah, you can't beat that.
You can't.
But, I'm excited to see the Hawkeyes, how they fare against the Missouri. On the women's side, we've been talking Cadle quite a bit, who, by the way, was a Fort Madison tournament champion. I'd have to look at the 2008. I went back and looked at that. William Penn is at that Soldier Salute. And so you have William Penn, Iowa, North Carolina, and then, just a bunch. Like I said, women's wrestling really isn't taken up. It's a bunch of schools you probably wouldn't know about, like Cornell, Indiana Tech, Life, Texas, Westland, Tiffin. I'm interested to see how William Penn fares. I feel like, they might be able to finish in the top 3. That'd be pretty cool for Coach Cadle and the State's women.
They have more than Mia Palumbo. I'm not going to say I know their names well, but they could have 3 people that are really, really up there at that Soldier Salute. They can compete at the NCAA level and more than hold their own.
Yeah, so we're going to find out a lot after that tournament.
All right, before we wrap things up here, Gage, you're the only one that's got wrestling credentials between all 3 of us. I got to ask you this question. I'll have our listeners, maybe they want to chime in, and they can email us or they can just drop a comment there in the comment box. Are shorter guys better at wrestling?
That's a good one. I think you see a lot of shorter guys wrestle probably because they're not as suited for basketball unless you have real good hand-eye coordination and can dribble and whatnot. So I think that's probably why you see it. I think it would depend on the weight, but you do see some longer guys. Look no further than the Lopez brothers. They're pretty long for their weights, and they were absolutely dominant. Marcel was a 4-time champ. I think of my cousin Sam. He was a longer guy. I threw his name out earlier. Russell Weekley was a senior at 106. I think he was 4'11", and he looked like a brick laid on mortar and then more brick. I think it's more short or tall. You could be good either way. When you're short, you're compact, but can you get low? Can you lower your hips? Can you move in space? Are you explosive and quick? And I think if you can do those things, based on your length and height, you can find a style that kind of works for you. But you can be short, tall, in between, indifferent. And if you can't lower your level, move, or react, you're probably not going to be very good at the sport of wrestling, or maybe any sport for that matter.
Well, according to Wikipedia, height can be both helpful and detrimental in wrestling. Since taller people have more bone mass, they will generally be slightly weaker than shorter people in the same weight class. The difference is made up in part by their longer arms, which allow them a longer reach and easier cradle.
Sorry, that was my dad joke. You can't edit that. You got to keep that in
we
there.
got to keep that. We were going to go out on that, though.
Sorry to interrupt that. I'd say another thing that while you were talking, I just thought leverage, is the other big one. You see it in those big weights. I think that leverage can help you as well.
Guys, any last-minute thoughts?
Well, I'll add my 2 cents to your last question there. I'll keep it brief, but as a former offensive lineman, even at New London, I study offensive line play. What makes a good offensive lineman? they want them to be about 6'4", 5 or 6. It just takes too long to uncoil from the 3-point stance. You can't get your hips low. I think being short in wrestling does have a distinct advantage. We have a recent case where Matt McDonough was wrestling 125, going for a state title, or for a national title at Iowa, and he wrestled a kid from Arizona State, name escapes me at this moment, but he only had one leg. He would just bend that knee and basically sit on the mat and force Matt McDonough to come down to his level. That's probably 35 pounds of extra muscle that he has in his upper body. You know, you look at that and you go, that's kind of a disadvantage for Matt McDonough. He's too tall in this case. So that's an interesting question I'm not a physical therapist or anything like that, but I do study this kind of stuff, and that's a very interesting question.
What you just said right there about him kind of makes you rethink wrestling and leverage and, like you said, weight. And yeah, so we'll let our listeners chime in on that. They can leave it in the comments. Are shorter guys better at wrestling?
I had one more thing, Danny.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was at Casey's in New London last night, and Josh Allen, goes by Spoof, came up to me, and he had listened to a couple episodes. So since he's a loyal listener, we got into a discussion about something Shane and I discussed last week in Iowa's lineup. So he wanted to weigh in. So we're going to call this a mailbag. If people wanted to throw questions in, how could they do that? You had a way that they could contact us.
Yeah, the Wrestlecast at outlook.com. So that's THE and then Wrestlecast at outlook.com.
This is Josh Allen. Now you got to understand, wrestling family from New London, but he was in probably one of the better wrestling classes ever at New London. He was classmates with Jarrett Cheery, who was a state champ, went on to wrestle for Iowa. Jake Lerdahl, who was a state champ, who now is an assistant coach to Damon Lloyd at New London. John Siegel, who runs DC Elite, who is a state champ, son of John Siegel, Johnny. I'm talking Johnny, but son of John Siegel, who will be a Hall of Famer. So, you got a guy who has been around wrestling. So this is what he said. Don't put Keeter in. He's not big enough yet. Let him kind of get better, wrestle for a year, get his body the way he wants it to be a college wrestler. So I thought that was interesting. He absolutely does not like Iowa's 149-pounder, even though he's ranked 8th. And he said, put Ferrari in there because he's exciting. Put AJ Ferrari when he's able to go at 97. And you put those two Ferraris at 97. Put Gabe Arnold in now and keep him in the rest of the year. Spoof also said at 84. So Arnold, the two Ferraris, and drive the getaway car, and that will help the Hawkeyes. Don't worry about Keeter. He can be the future, but that'll help the Hawkeyes have a shot come March. So that was our fan mailbag. So thanks to loyal listener Josh Allen for giving us that insight.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, everyone. And this is the Wrestlecast. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to find out about advertising, you can email us at thewrestlecast.com. And we invite you to check out some of our other casts. This is episode number 3. We've got a couple more. Plus, I mentioned a little bit ago, we'll be posting some more cuts and full interviews with some of the people we've been talking about. Guys, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. And to our listeners, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, too. Take us out, Gage, with a dad joke.
All right, let's see what we got.
Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom? The P is silent.
Okay, we better try a different one.
Yeah, let's try something else.
Okay.
You heard the rumor going around about butter? Never mind, I shouldn't spread it.
Okay. Merry Christmas, everyone.
That's it for this week's edition of the Wrestlecast. For questions on advertising on our program, or if you'd just like to drop us a line, you can do so at sportscastmedia@outlook.com. Follow Sportscast Media on Facebook, or go to our website at www.sportscastmedia.com. The Wrestlecast is a presentation of the Sportscast Media Network.